In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
I wonder if that grinder ever needs cleaning. Seems like that'd be something that would need cleaning at least once or twice a day in this kind of an establishment. All the all the bumping and grinding that goes on around this place.
Isn't that the place down the block, the Bump and Grind?
Oh yeah, that's right. That's that new bar that just opened up. It's a singles bar, I believe.
Oh, I thought it was a coffee place where you had to actually elbow the grinder to get it to work or something.
No, I don't think it's... I think it's actually a singles bar.
Oh. I thought that'd be the Grind and Bump.
Yeah, maybe that's what they put on their health permit.
I've never been sure which you do first, so...
I have a feeling that if you go to a place called the Bump and Grind, you don't really care about a health permit.
That's a fair enough observation, yeah. I would think that assumption works. As long as the maraschino cherries are good,
yeah,
you know, that's all I care about.
Keep them
Never
coming.
been in one of those places. I remember my brother, who has always been a little odd around the edges, to say the least, in a very odd way, drove us to the parking lot of one of those establishments one time and tried to get me to go in, and I was just like, nope. I was 25 at the time or something, and I was like, no, come on, I got a good record going here. No, what do I want to go in there for? And he's just like, come on, I'll pay for everything. I said, no, he couldn't get me in, so I didn't go.
What a bad influence he was on you.
Yeah, he was. I think he was exclusively. That was, I think, the reason was he wanted to see me sink to the level of he and his friends.
Maybe.
I mean, whatever. I mean, there's nothing against nudity. I mean, we're all born that way, so there's no shame in TNA and all the other stuff, and there's no shame in showing it off. If people find it alluring or beautiful, it's just, sort of. I don't know. I like my runs of things that I've never done before. I like to keep them intact, so that was one of them. And now, I mean, hell, it's 25, 27 years later. So that's a long standing record now.
Maybe he was trying to blackmail you.
Well, I'm trying to think of what I was doing for work at the time. I'm not sure that would have done much. Maybe with my ex-wife, that could easily have been it. And then, here, send out the pictures. Oh yeah, here's Jack just mucking it up inside the titty bar. I think it's just the whole notion. I think it's sadly, for, anybody listening, I'm sorry, but I think it's just beneath me. I think it's just, honestly, just hanging out and watching a bunch of girls shake their money makers and drinking alcohol, and just, it's not my idea of fun. Feeling, when a man is feeling really amorous, when he really wants to have sex, he said, it's like being hungry and going to a place where the cheeseburger's behind a glass enclosure and you can't get at it. Why would I want to do that to myself? I'm starving to death. And it's kind of like,
beast.
I think as a man, I can, sadly, I can appreciate that.
That's a pretty good analogy.
I think so. I always liked that, because seriously, what is the point of all of that? We know that there are deals that are done in the back rooms of those places. I mean, and the police just look the other way. It has to be, because, men are not real savvy with look but don't touch for very long.
Policy.
That's just not how the world works. So like I said, I've never been in one of those places, so I don't know.
Wow.
I couldn't tell you.
Well, I wish I could say the same. I went to one once, and
College?
yeah, I want to say it was right after college. I think it was
Right after college.
It was for a friend's bachelor party.
Oh, yes.
And they drug me along to that, and it was a weird situation because in our state you're not supposed to serve alcohol at those locations, and so it was kind of like a perverse social club where alcohol is not allowed. So picture your, average hangout. I don't know, maybe like some youth organization where everyone's hanging out and they're just drinking a bunch of Mountain Dew, and it's just a weird vibe. Not to mention, just after a while, everyone kind of starts to look at each other and just kind of go, I think I'm good.
Yeah. I think I'm good before I go in. That's what I mean. It's just sort of like, I don't really need to. I mean, I'm sure the women are all very lovely, and I'm sure they have great lives ahead of them. And
no, I don't. I don't think so.
I'm giving the benefit of the doubt here across the board, but I don't. I don't need to patronize the establishment. They've got plenty of gentlemen who are ready to come in and ogle. They don't need my eyes in there.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of an odd experience because one of the guys we were with kind of enjoyed it a little too much.
The virgin in the group, huh?
Yeah, it was just kind of a weird situation. It was kind of like when, I don't know, what would be, there would be an analogy for it. But yeah, it was kind of one of those situations where everyone just kind of felt a little uneasy that he enjoyed it that much. And, but yeah, to each his own, I guess.
Yeah, like I said, nothing against naked bodies or almost naked bodies and jiggling and all that sort of stuff and pole dancing. It's all wonderful. It has its place, but I have other things to do,
Speaking of lonely men, there's a new documentary movie that is circling the globe, and it is a very interesting topic. It is about the gender gap that is present in China, where 30 million Chinese men outnumber Chinese women, and many of them in their 30s and 40s are now stuck in a situation where they're trying to date and establish some form of relationship with women, and they're having a very hard time doing it.
There aren't any, because so many of them were suffocated by their parents during because that was a real problem. There was a lot of child murders, infant murders that went on in China for years because everybody wants a boy child, but females are responsible for procreation, and so that's not a real smart social standard to a society that's 80% men to 20% women isn't going to last very long for a lot of reasons besides just procreational math.
It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know that anyone ever really put two and two together. And
doesn't seem like it.
It's unfortunate because there's this new documentary that is called, I'm trying to find it, Feverishly. No, that's not the name of the documentary.
That's a good one, though. Feverishly.
It's called The Dating Game.
China is running out of women.
Yeah, it's called The Dating Game. And essentially it follows these four men who are seeking help by going to a dating camp.
A dating camp?
Yeah, a dating camp. And there are different things that, for many of these people, it is kind of like an intense, almost like trying to find a job. To where they go through this training, and some of them have even enlisted the ranks of AI to have some kind of like digital relationship with a woman before actually having a real relationship with a woman.
Oh, because that's going to be exactly the same. Of
course.
Oh,
absolutely.
I mean, call me the Warren Beatty of AI women. Just Tens of thousands of them just stacked on end. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, how can anything? Well, here's the thing, though. You can be, as we've discussed before in certain aspects on this very forum, you can be married 20 years and think you know someone and be thrown the biggest sinker that you swing, and I mean, you fling your bat into the stands, you've whiffed at it so hard. I mean, so life, people, it doesn't matter whether they're your significant others or your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your business partner, or I mean, people are constantly throwing you curveballs. Their behavior, their words, their thoughts, their actions. It's obviously one of the things that makes life interesting and also hellacious and maddening all at the same time. So I don't know that AI is going to be able to do a woman in this case, especially, a woman in a relationship justice, because I could write books about my experiences and I'm not even close to being Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, I've only been with just so many in the confines of a committed relationship. So,
well, it's kind of interesting because this film is actually a film by Du Fang, is her name, and really the argument is that they grow up without access to girls, and so then in some ways, these men then are using digital bots as a way to train them into being able to interact with a woman, because a lot of them grew up without proper parenting. Their parents were maybe in another region while they were working or doing something else in life, and they were actually forced to live with their grandparents or with other family members. And then they grew up without access to girls, which is, I think a very foreign idea for us in this country, is that they haven't been around women.
That should be on every application, by the way, for perks for joining anything, for joining a club, for joining college, for joining like signing up for a job, anything like that. Access to women. Yeah, well, the salary range is right on the money. I like the bonus plan. I'm very good with a vacation package, and I think the dental plan is awesome. Now, will I have access to women? I'm talking women, baby, stacked on ends, one after the other after the other.
Oh, man.
I think it depends. I mean, having no access to girls, as this is saying, is because I had a sister, I had a mother. Now, poor mom, I don't know if she's looking on from high or wherever, the deal is right now, but the worst advice I ever took in my life was from my mother. But that was my fault because, it's a very valuable lesson, because I just think I knew after like the first date, it was just not going to work for me. Yes, she was extremely beautiful, but I'd already gone through that. I'd already been put through the looks aren't everything ringer once, pretty hard. So the last thing I needed was another crazy blonde Baywatch girl. And so, I let it go over the summer, and then I was done. I was just like, okay, and then, mom was just like, how can you be like this? And she just read me the riot act and said, you're too picky and too choosy. You're going to wind up alone. Da, 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 da. I said, gosh, and mom's word was iconic. So I took it, wound up staying with her. And 22 years later, we're getting divorced, and I'm, it's like you don't ever have nothing to show for it, but it is kind of a vacant feeling. It's just sort of like, I don't know what all that, it's kind of like, and I told you so, Jack, you dumbass. I remember distinctly looking at myself in the bathroom mirror at 23, a tender young 23. I had the whole world in front of me. I had my life in front of me. I could have done anything. And it was just like, don't attach yourself to this blonde, because there's a million of them out there. And this is not the one. And you know it. So for God's sakes, just do what needs to be done. And I was going to. And then I listened to my mother, who was not a woman you wanted to take relationship advice from, because she was married to a sociopath for 30 years. And so, but I didn't get that until later on in life. So then, but my sister, that's a different story, because, she's in the mix. My sister was quite promiscuous, and she had lots of boyfriends and per se. And so she could really dish it if it came to advice. And so you had to be careful. So again, access to girls. Okay, what does that mean? I mean, because a boy has to have a mother, a boy might have a sister, a boy may have an aunt. There are women in the family who can be leaned into for a little bit of advice in this area.
Well,
so
according to this documentary, these men haven't been exposed to women very much of their lives. And that being said, women in China are also finding that these virtual boyfriends are more appealing than actually having a relationship with real men. So,
that's no surprise.
So it swings both ways in the land of China. So right now, I think a Chinese matchmaker might actually be a budding industry.
Men have always stayed boys longer than women have stayed girls. But wow, do men stay boys for a long time now. At home in the basement playing video games with Dorito crumbs everywhere at 40 is very common. And I think part of what keeps a man there is the lack of a drive to be in a relationship with a woman whom he knows is going to insist that those things at least be largely curtailed to weekends or certain hours of the day when he's not needed by her and the family. It's of no interest to men. They're regressing. I think, that Darwinian thing where they're coming out of the ocean and I think they're going back the other way now, and they have video game controllers in their hands. And here's the one thing that I feel like is really tragic about that. And I've always felt like is really tragic about just passing yourself around like a cigar, like just being this, great lover and never really getting to know anybody that well and not caring about it, is because one of the best things about having a relationship outside of the companionship and the friendship and the fact you can get help with things when you've got, I had a boil. I had a carbuncle on my back one time. And thank God I happened to be in a relationship at the time, because the person whom I was with, they took care of me. And they did a really good job, because otherwise I would have had to go to the doctor. They would have had to lance it. It would have been a multi-visit process. But this person essentially helped get rid of it. So those are all perks of having a relationship. But yes, you do have a lot of time to invest. You have a lot of emotional energy to invest in all these things. But one of the best things that gives back to a person, I think, about the relationship, any relationship, is that you get the opportunity to know someone else and get to know someone else. You're invested in trying to both figure out and also ascertain through long, difficult conversations in front of the fireplace and all that kind of shit. You get to truly learn the intricate workings of another human being if you are interested. And I think a lot of people, I'm not going to just throw it on men, because I don't think it's true anymore, because I've known some women who are just like, he looks good and bathes once a week, and I'm all right, and he's employed, and he buys me stuff, so there it goes both ways.
Oh,
I don't know, that's how I've always felt.
I think all the women in the audience are like, oh, now we know why he's taken.
I think now we know why he has Gemini in the 7th house is probably a better.
Yeah, probably. What did you call the thing that was on your back? What was that?
A carbuncle. So a carbuncle is a boil, basically, but it's a boil that has more than one opening for pus to drain out. Yeah.
That's romantic. I was going to say carbuncle. Do you have to see a mechanic for that? Or what's the... I know, honey, we haven't been on a serious date. This is probably date number 2. But I'd like for you to assist me with my carbuncle on my back.
I always thought it sounded like the answer to a trivia question. It was like, okay, the Mertzes lived next door to the Ricardos. Who were the neighbors directly above them? The carbuncles.
Oh,
yes.
Yay. Congratulations. No, I think you raise a really good point. I think, what is it that people are looking for? And I think in your case, it was definitely like a relationship, and understanding another human being. Part of what has led me to believe there is an abundance of, how I love generation labels, but what would this be? Generation X?
Who?
Generation Y.
We're Gen X. I think you're just right barely on the tail end of X, and I'm definitely right in the middle of it.
So I think, the Generation Y people, why they haven't really maybe
Gen Y are the real kids. They're the ones
okay.
that are.
They're the millennials?
You're talking Gen Z.
Okay, fine. Gen Z, whatever.
20s?
Yeah, Gen Z.
Most 20s is Gen Z. Late 20s, some of those kids are still millennials, but most of the early 20s, mid 20s are Gen Z.
Okay, so I think one of the reasons this has led to Gen Z maybe not having as much of a need to launch as maybe Generation X did was there's this new phenomenon called doormat parents. Have you heard of this?
Doormat parents?
Doormat parents.
No.
It's this viral online phenomenon. And no, it's not something you have to go see your doctor for, like the carbuncle.
Or you can
But
put a key under.
It's a viral online phenomenon that, particularly on TikTok, that describes parents, often mothers, who feel used, unappreciated, or suddenly cut off by their estranged adult children despite their extensive support, leading them to share their stories and find community and advocate for parental rights in a public shift away from the silent acceptance of mistreatment. So I think, in some ways, it's this group of baby boomer parents that have decided that they've been wronged by not having their kids launch or maybe launching.
Do the same thing they did.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, I think there's this tendency of millennials to allow their parents to hang on to their lives for too long. And maybe some of it had to do with economic situations. Maybe Johnny couldn't afford health insurance, and so he stayed at home and just decided that he wasn't going to launch the way his parents did. And you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, launching is a lot more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah.
This sounds a little bit whiny, I have to say, on the part of the procreators.
The
Because
doormat
remember,
parents.
when you have children, your expectations about what is going to be reciprocated to you from them should be absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
You have taken on the responsibility of parenting children. And the old notion that my kids are going to love me back no matter what, they're especially going to love me back if I put in all of this effort and get pizza for the Little League team after every game and sew all the uniforms and the school play from the time they're 4 years old and drive them to college every day and let them stay at, home even after they graduate because they can't get a decent job, and that it is fictitious. You need to get over those expectations. They are their own people and they're here on their own journeys. And your responsibility is to raise them until they are of legal adulthood in our society, which is 18, and to do the best you can to provide what they need to be biologically vital and hopefully give them a decent steer when it comes to, their verity, but morals and principles and scruples and other things come from other places too. There are lots of, I get it. There's lots of peer groups that kids go through. I mean, I think one of the things that's probably the healthiest thing in the world that any parent or child could do when they don't like each other is to just flatly admit it at whatever age it begins. I mean, teenagers, let's face it, they hate their parents a lot of times, and they don't really hate their parents. They don't even know what hate is yet, and they're making those calls, but they hate them for different things. They don't like the control measures because it's an experimental time. And, so I get it. 12, 13, 14, 16 even, that almost doesn't count. But adult children, especially, if you're 30 and you haven't figured out yet whether you like your mom or dad, that's ridiculous. Whether you like your mom or dad as a person, not as a parent, but as a person. A lot of people I think could say, well, I didn't care for the way that I was raised. I didn't like the rules my parents had. I didn't like but I like them as people, or I respect them at least. This pseudo notion that you're supposed to be pals with your folks, even when you're not, it doesn't go with the territory, because souls are souls and that's it. And this blood thing, okay, blood is thicker than water. I really don't want to grant you that, but I will, because I know that we're not going to make that leap overnight. But it's way too thick at this point, as far as I'm concerned.
It's smothering.
This argument that just because you've been pushed from my loins then we owe each other something. You don't. That's not the way this works. You know what I'm saying? We have to get rid of the expectations that go along with rearing a child to adulthood, where then suddenly they owe you something and then they're going to take care of you in the nursing home one day. That's fantasy.
Yeah, and I think also part of the situation that we're dealing with here is kind of this evolution of relationships. And I think that when people have kids and they go through the process of raising them and, getting them to a point to where they're self-sufficient enough. And, I think there's also these situations in life where parents really like a role that they're in. They see themselves in life as being a mom or a dad, or I see it more with moms than I do with dads, but I definitely see where there's moms who really like this idea of being the Cub Scout mom and playing this kind of part in this role.
Because it's a measure of influence or even control.
Yeah.
That's why.
So they're getting something from it.
I have influence over little Tommy because even,
So they're getting something from this. And they almost like that role so much that they don't really want to give it up at the end of the day, to where they go, okay, Johnny, Mary, whoever their kid is, has grown up. They've, moved out into the real world with their significant other. They've started to have children. They've, are now starting to develop their role in this world. And they just don't want to give it up. And, the sad thing is for many of these people, they're missing out on what is the next role in life. And that is being a grandparent, or, being, something else for their children that, maybe they didn't have, or maybe they did have with their parents, but for whatever reason, maybe they didn't have a great relationship with their parents. So they don't really know how to move on in that role in their kids' next chapter in life. It's really sad.
Yeah, but, everything is supposed to be evolving, so why not the dynamics of human relationships? I mean,
you would think
the picture that we've been projecting for hundreds of years is this Norman Rockwell thing where, it's all very primal, in my opinion. Man finds woman, marries woman, makes children with woman, woman cooks and cleans and basically does what man says. Man goes and works and clubs dinosaurs. I know they didn't live at the same time, folks, please, but clubs tauntauns on the head and brings home to roast for food. And then we do it all over again until the children are able to reach the age where they do it. And then as the aging cave parents have to stay home more because they could get trampled out there foraging and hunting, then children bring home food and, we live out rest of life. But there's a lot more to it than that. It's not that simple.
Woman roasts turkey for painter for portrait.
I can't underscore enough how this ties in with this whole, age of Aquarius expectation that we're going to broaden to a human equality. It's bandied about a lot these days, and there's all of these different pitfalls for equality that we find ourselves falling down. I mean, there's racial equality that's been around for decades, but then there's financial equality, which I think is among the social ones is the biggest issue that we have, quite frankly, because we can't change the color of our skin. We've chosen to be whatever that is. And so it's, there's not much we can do to moderate or mitigate that, and there are no reasons why anybody should want to. So, that one we've got to just get over, because to me it's so baseline, it's so fundamental. But there's all these different issues that we create and that we, this equality thing. But I think at the end of it, aren't we all looking to just arrive as being able to look at each other as one big family of brothers and sisters? I mean, I have a brother and sister. I mean, my sister's dead, so So I had 2 siblings, but I got 8 billion brothers and sisters when you really want to get right down to it. And I loved my sister, and we had our moments, and I love my brother, and we've had our moments. But I've met some people during the course of my life who are vastly superior to them in understanding and identifying with the person that I really am, that I identify as, and who understand and get me, and who I really seek the company of. Those are my brothers and sisters just the same. And in fact, in those ways, they're more so. So why then, I ask, do we put ourselves in the crosshairs of these family trees that are just disasters? They're just, they're nightmarish. They're so, dysfunction doesn't even begin to scrape the tip of what's wrong. And yet we continue to go back and get beaten on and neglected and abused by choice because blood is thicker than water. And we have to stop doing that, because there's an entire world of people out there that are your brothers and sisters. And to me, that's the cosmic revolution calling. That's the cosmic way of looking at it, to say, look, you're really limiting yourself if it's, you only really best friends with, me, dad, her mom, and all the other things that we squeeze out together. We make child, and they your best friend, but everybody else you leave alone. That's tribalism.
Yeah. And I think that raises a really interesting point in this whole conversation, because really at the end of the day, I think it comes down to that family unit that has a hard time expanding beyond that. And so in the parents' minds, or, maybe in the child's mind to some degree, they haven't had the ability to really look beyond, say, their lives in 1996 or whatever that time and that point was in their life where they decided that was their role for the rest of their life. And one of the things I think that really is key in this whole conversation is because the kids, or maybe the parents, are rarely denied what they want.
Oh, yeah.
And so then there's this poor emotional regulation. And so then they cling to these emotions that they're constantly feeling. And again, some kids maybe do need to take a few years off and spend, the summer on the couch. But then at the same time, you can't really fault your parents for then saying, hey, we have played this role now in your life, and you're sleeping on our couch, and at what point are you going to move on with your life? And vice versa. You can't really fault the kid for wanting to move on with their life, and the parents saying, hey, well, I'm not a doormat.
My sister financially manipulated and abused my mother for 20 years.
Yeah.
As an addict. It's an extreme example. It's not just apathy. It's not just ennui after losing your first job at the video store and then not really knowing how to get back on your feet. But, I talked with my mother about it on a number of occasions, and she just said, she's my child. I can't say no to my child. She'll die. And she knew that was her fate. Mm-hmm. And she knew that was the crossroads. The crossroads was, if I kick her out, if I demand things that she knows that she's capable of, but isn't willing to do at this point, she's going to die. Mm-hmm. And I will be directly responsible as far as the way I see it. And she basically always used to end by saying, Jack, I appreciate your concern, but fuck off. You're not a mother. You're not a parent, first of all, and you're not a mother. And so you can't understand. And I backed off.
That's tough.
I wasn't trying to pressure her, but I think I was very curious as to why. She was a very intelligent woman. And so why are you knowingly enabling your daughter? Because, there's that whole, you're enabling her at the same time. So aren't you just as responsible for slowly killing her? And she said, it's better than the alternative. Mm. So, these are karmic things that get sorted out in the shuffle. And you do, as, again, a sibling or as a child, another child of a parent in this situation do need to learn when to back off and look at it from a more distant viewpoint and say, okay, this really isn't my place to meddle. And so I figured out my role where I was safe and couldn't get pulled down into the whirlpool with the two of them, because I would get taken down just the same, and there was no reason for that. So
yikes, that's tough. That's a real tough
so
position.
Anyway, but that's an extreme example. But I think the entitlement, the Karens and Kevins that are out there, that plays a part in it. And then the kids, they grow up spoiled, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I've seen children's affection bought, for sure. There's no question about that. I've seen people buy their kids. They're not buying their love for real, because you can't. It's impossible to broker love with money.
But I also see it from the perspective too of there's parents who allow their kids to broker for their affection as well, which is really
it goes
strange.
Both ways.
Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, it goes both ways. So I don't know. It's like I said, human dynamics. They're always interesting. But I am always going to harp on that very unusual chord. And I've gotten a lot of shit for it. People do not appreciate my stance about family, because they just, to me, are dumbstruck. They're born into this notion, and they learn from society and from watching television and all these other, wherever they get it from, that you are just absolutely indentured to your family unit, your family tree, no matter what is going on. You're with those people and only those people to the bitter end. That is fucking bullshit. That is nonsense as far as I'm concerned.
Isn't that crazy too, how smart people will make the worst decisions when it comes to family?
And it's a game. It becomes a game of manipulation to a lot of people too. Do you really want to go over to their house for Christmas? And the answer is absolutely positively no. The truth is just no. I do not want to go over there for Christmas. I've had it. I'm tired of it. I don't like it there. It makes me feel bad. My aura gets darkened. My energy gets repulsed. I'm a wreck when I leave. As soon as I get there, I'm, having a panic attack. That's not good. And a holiday that's been on the fucking calendar for a few hundred years, where we all gather and, drink eggnog and give each other gifts, is not a good enough reason for you to put yourself through that repeatedly on an annual basis. It's time to grow up. It's time to grow out of some of these traditions that tell us to do things that are not good for our spiritual energy, when there's a world filled with 8 billion people to seek that can do you a lot better. Yeah. I think, honestly, if you're born and you like your parents, they really are friends of yours, fantastic. Go with it.
Nothing to knock on that.
If you like your siblings, fantastic. Go with that. But if you don't like those people, if they're not your people, for God's sakes, just leave them behind, let them be, and go out into the world. It's filled with people, and find the ones that you identify with. Find the ones that are for you. It doesn't mean you have to be mean or ruthless with them, but it does mean that you've got to quit faking it, because nobody gets anything out of that.
Well, and I think there also comes a point where you have to say, having a healthy adult relationship with other healthy adults is the key. And knowing where the boundaries are, and not having, just like you say, this baggage of, this is the way it is, and this is how we've always done it. Because it can really, I think, cause then new relationships in that person's life to derail.
Not that I'm not concerned about the heartland of America and what it means for, the cheese table or my cereal bowl, but it's just like this. It's like this farm family shit. It's like this, all damn kids running off to the city don't want to stay and run the family farm. No, they don't want to fucking stay and run the family fucking farm. They don't want to roll in pig shit every day like you've had them doing from the time that they're 3 years old. They don't see the same use for it. They're not here to be farmers. But here's the thing. FAA or FHA or whatever they 4-H, those, Future Farmers of America, FFA.
FFA, yeah.
It's filled with young lads and lassies that are interested in the earth and farming, whether they come from a farming background or not. So guess what? The Well of Souls, if we're going to just, go that route with this, is putting plenty of little farmers, little Jills and Jacks here with straw hats and pitchforks that are going to run the farms of the world because they have an interest in it, because that's what they're here to do. So this forcible torture, this, I don't care what you say, Joe Jack, you're staying on the goddamn farm and you're not going to Indianapolis to go to college and being some, dentist, we don't allow that. Look, if the kid's here to work on teeth and he knows it cosmically, you got to let him go do it. You don't have to let him go easily. Obviously you're not. But so there's that thing too, where it's just automatically you want to take over the family plot. That's also a ridiculous notion. Think about it. They're such basic shackles. Would you want that to be the case?
Never.
My dad had that story to tell. My dad was born to a rancher in Idaho, and my grandfather was absolutely set on his kids were going to run that fucking ranch, and that ranch was going to be around until he was dead and the next generation was dead. It was going to be around for thousands of years. As long as Idaho was a thing and that ranch was a thing, there was going to be a Hanson that was running that ranch the way he saw it. And several of his kids, they stuck it out for a while. My dad left when he was 14. It's a famous story that I heard a million times whenever I was wanting to, vent a little bit about my own childhood and where it was going, because, the story is that his mom handed him a $20 bill and, it's 1946 or whatever it is at the time. I guess he was born in 34.
$20 would buy you a lot
48.
those days.
Yeah. So, $50 or $20 or something like that in 1948, it would stretch. She put him on the bus to Salt Lake City and off he went. And that was it. He never came back home again. And he found his way. And maybe that was a day and time when you could do that a little easier. And maybe the story was pure bullshit, because my dad was certainly known for spinning a yarn for the sake of making himself look a little better than what actually happened. But the point still remains the same, which is, he doesn't want to herd cows. That's not what he was here for. And even though he was not the greatest guy in the world, he did do a lot of things that were very pioneering in several fields that were not about herding fucking cows. And I'm not saying that there's no value in herding cows and being a rancher, because there absolutely is. But the kids that are here to be ranchers and know it need to be the ones that are doing it, not the ones that are here and born to rancher families and need to get off the ranch. I don't know why they're born to that, because that'd be the next question. Well, Jack, how come they're not just, kid ranchers should just be born to the regular ranches? Whoever's sending these souls down here's got it fucked up. Look, it could be a bureaucracy just the same as Earth. Maybe they're screwing shit up. Maybe people are getting the wrong slips. I don't know.
You think heaven has government employees that are just bureaucrats? They're just there for the pension.
Doesn't make sense to try and keep a kid hostage on a ranch if he's not a rancher, especially as he ages into adulthood. What he's going to be farming is resentment, a whole lot of it. And we got enough of that as there is. All right. Well, we spent a lot of time chatting about families and all that. And
I'm not going to be a doormat for these kids anymore, I tell you. I'm not a doormat.
Yeah, but you had them, so that's
true.
That's kind of your problem.
Now I'm going to take to social media where I can pontificate with all my other doormat friends.
I always hated being treated like two show dogs that were going to be bred to make another. Because that's how my ex-wife, my ex-wife is quite beautiful.
Look at the pedigree on this one.
Yeah, and so I know that was always, we were getting that constantly. The strangers or the people that were sort of outliers that were saying that weren't alluding to that, but her parents, and they were always with the, well, my gosh, you're both just so wonderful looking. You'd have the most beautiful babies. And it's just like, and I just think, I'm not open for stud, madam. That is not why I am here on your planet.
That's why Jack got off of the farm.
But so many people would ask that over the years as time went on. It was, how come the two of you don't have any kids? Like, what's the problem? How come you don't have any kids? And it got to be nagging, like, where are you kids? You need to have kids. Why do you have kids? And finally, I started just tossing it back in their face. And I'd say, well, why do you have them? Because it's always, why don't we have them? What's wrong with us? Why do you have them? What's wrong with you? And the answer I got was just stunning, because it was always the same. And it's just what people do. I remember the first time I heard it and I thought, oh, that's the best you can do. And then 95 other people said it. And I was like, oh my God, this is literally the programmed answer to that. Why do you have kids? You're bugging me about not procreating. Why do you have them? Because it's just what people do. It's like, oh, well, there's a reason to do something. Everybody else is doing it. That sounds great to me.
Tell your therapist, kids.
All right. So I don't really have downloads per se this week, but I have a couple thoughts that I wrote down. And I'll just share them real quickly, kind of more just humorous bent here kind of stuff. I was thinking about this one yesterday when I was doing the treadmill. It seems to be one of my new places where I have a lot of interesting thoughts, the treadmill. Who knew? Usually water has to, I'm sweating my ass off. So there's the conductivity right there. So I wrote this: when the Grim Reaper comes down to take my ass away, he better be wearing his Armani robe and hood, because I don't like being disrespected when death shows up to take me to the afterlife looking all shaggy and shit with those tattered robes and whatnot. So that was just a thought.
Oh, brother.
If the Grim Reaper has a nice black robe, a good, he needs to wear that one when he comes and knocks on the door and says, I am dead, here to take you away. It's a really nice looking robe you got. You think so? I put it on just for you. I knew that was the case. You and I getting along just fine as we cross the river Styx together. Let's go.
Is this a DeLorean?
Out of here. I don't know what made me think of that. You know what I think made me think of that was I saw a guy in the gym who was, I saw the same guy on the opposite side of the gym, but he was dressed two different ways. There was like the guy who was all spiffy in the black shirt with the black shorts,
matching,
and the black crew socks, and the black, and that's a little bit how I am. It's you don't have to have like the full outfit regalia when you go to the gym, but to me, I put some thought into it. It's just like, okay, I'm here. So he's looking on, and then they cross the way. It's just, this guy's in rags, and it's just like, yeah, I know it's just working out. You can do it in whatever you want, but it got me to thinking for some reason about old Grimmy, and like how upset I'm going to be if he shows up, in those tattered ones. I can't have that. So that's a request that I've made. The other thing that I wrote down, and this really probably deserves like a whole paper, so I'll get to work on that right away, I'm sure. But I was thinking about how frustrating I can be to people, because I have Aquarians are really known for, I'm not an Aquarius, remember, but I have the two planets that are pretty prominent there in the second house, and they show up a lot in my material possessions, especially because it's second house energy. But Aquarians are well known for needing to be different than everybody else. It's important to them. It's part of their thing. They can't be doing what the crowd is doing. And I definitely identify with that. So I kind of broke it down and was thinking about, well, if I had to appease somebody that just got to know me and they were observing this behavior and it was really starting to irritate them, which it can. I've known plenty of people who've been driven crazy by that. How would you explain it to them? And this is what I wrote down. The only things that I like that are popular are air, water, and food. And these things all tend to also conjure the word need rather than like. I'd say that love is one of those things too, by the way, but we all know that's not exactly popular now, is it? And I know that's a little bit of a pessimistic viewpoint.
A little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, exactly. So, yep. It's amazing what popularity will undo for me.
Nah, I like your, I think that's why you and I have always gotten along. That and our
Why is that?
interest in George Carlin.
Well, George, he was anti-establishment, counterculture, and I think that's, part of it is just is a guise. Let's face it. Part of it is just, I don't want to be into what everybody else is into. But there is also a side of it that's not just counterculture for the sake of counterculture. It's counterculture because it's the right fucking way to be. Because you know that what's going on is illusory bullshit, and you pull the veil off. I'm not going to allow a cloche to remain over something when there's nothing under there, because that's most of life now is, ooh, look, it's sparkly and great and shiny and wonderful, and everybody's doing it because it's worthwhile. Bullshit. People are doing things because they're told to, and they're sheep. And they're getting stupider all the time. And it's tragic. And it's exactly what the leaders want. Although I think they're really running into a problem now because they made us too stupid. They fed us a little bit too much of that fluoridated water. And now it's, I don't know. I also thought of this too, because we're coming off yet another one of those things with that fella, the guy with the spray tan he's president of something. I don't remember. Anyway, that guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. Making the grisly murders of two people about him in the most narcissistic way. So I think I finally figured out maybe what I hope we're doing. I know we're not, but this is what I'm going to go with to make myself feel better. We finally decided to just show the world how ridiculous we feel the position of president really is.
Whoa.
And so this is where we're at. And I have not heard anybody take that bent before. I've never heard anybody take that perspective of, we've actually gotten so fed up with the notion of this president bullshit.
It's so American, really.
Yeah, that this is who we're going to elect twice. So that's what I'm going with from now on.
We're going to put the bastard on the bench, and then we're going to reelect him. No, I like that theory. That's a good one.
Well, I don't, like I said, know if it's true or not, because I hear a lot of sheep neighing.
Let's run with it.
And it's funny, as I hear the sheep neighing in the 21st century, I hear an awful lot of automatic gunfire behind them, too, which is kind of unnerving, but what can you do?
As this country embarks on its 250th year of democracy, I have a proposition that we will elect a complete buffoon and show the world that we are above buffoonery.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
If you want to prove your village doesn't have an idiot, just put him in charge.
Wow. Look at you. What are we listening to, by the way?
This is Robert Pabst and a band called Domino from Germany.
Deutschland.
Ja, und Deutschland is German.
They're rearming now. Have you heard about that?
Rearming? When did they de-arm?
After World War II.
Or disarm. After World War II, they weren't allowed to have arms anymore.
Now they're rearming.
All right. I think this is very good. We're doing some big things in Germany. It's going to pay off big. It's going to pay off big for you and everybody that we know. There's going to be big checks in the mail for you, Michael. Go to your mailbox. Start looking.
Yeah, we can now buy guns again. Yeah. But we have to buy them from the United States. Yeah.
Ah, of course.
Yes,
that's why.
yes.
Yeah, that's why we're looking for your check in the mailbox soon. How about those checks for $1,776.00 US that were already in a bill that was passed like 4 fucking years ago too? That
is that checks as in paper checks or Czechoslovakia?
As Chechnya is what it's called now. Yeah, no, I don't know. That's one way to actually make bureaucratic time lapses look a lot better though on paper, right?
We're gonna send Americans checks.
Mr. President, we have all these overdue checks. What do you want to do with them? Oh, my God. We'll send them out 4 years late, $1,776 each. Instead of the overages, we'll keep that.
All right, until we meet again.
Until we meet again.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own Existence Brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.